96.3 FM, The Source.
Just about 5 minutes after 9 o'clock. Nice looking Wednesday. I think all the cold temperatures are behind us. Really cold temperatures. Although, Mike Fallon doesn't really care. I was stalking Mike one day. He was in Dublin, Ireland, and I was living vicariously through my live video feed on Earth's camera.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I was trying to wave to that camera out in the street.
I sent you a picture.
Yeah.
I have no idea if you're in the picture.
I mean, there's so many people who would know. I look like everyone there, so.
Oh, you fit in?
Yeah.
You blend in?
Yeah.
All right, this is Higher Education Happenings. Mike Fallon is your host, and he's the director of Webster University's Ocala Metropolitan Campus. Ocala Metropolitan Campus.
Ooh, fancy.
And we're here to talk about higher education happenings. Good morning, Mike, and good morning, everybody. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, we're excited to be here. We got a nice crew. They've been on before, so they'll have to introduce themselves. I'm sure you'll remember them once they say their names.
Absolutely.
But today we're talking about first responders.
Okay.
First responder programs, any type of incentives, job outlook, things that we do locally.
That's got to be the kind of career that you have to have camaraderie with your other workers, because you see so many horrible things. The only way to remedy whatever happens to us as human beings when we see something horrible is to have close friends, right?
Sure.
I think that's probably part of that experience. So I wonder if that's part of what's taught. Is what to expect. Anybody want to? Is that a weird first question?
Yes, I'm Dr. Charles McIntosh. I'm the Dean of Criminal Justice and Public Service at the College of Central Florida.
Doctor.
Good morning. Yes, usually within the first day or two of the academy, myself as a dean, I'll come in and speak with the students, and also to my right here, Coordinator Kelly. Usually we kind of get them into the culture of law enforcement. That's one of the things we tell them, is what to expect. We all see it on the news and on social media, but, there's nothing like, someone coming in who's actually been there. And I actually still practice out with the sheriff's office, and we try to, kind of let them know what's out there.
I mean, the one thing anybody in work, every job, you say, don't take your work home with you. But in that particular field, law enforcement and EMTs, oh my gosh, you almost have to take it home because you have somebody else at home. If you're married anyway, you have somebody else at home who can kind of help you get through whatever it is you saw, right?
Kat Kelly, Law Enforcement Coordinator at the College of Central Florida. That's exactly right, and that's one of the things that we deal with, is because you don't stop being a police officer or sheriff's deputy when you walk across the threshold of your home. You're reliving the things that you've seen throughout the day, and it takes a heavy toll on officers. So it's one of the things that we deal with. And in terms of the community, we actually offer a course called Interactions in a Diverse Community, where we teach them what to expect and how to react, and outwardly towards the individuals they're seeing, as well as themselves, and how they take it home to their families.
And I didn't quite get it. What school are you with?
College of Central Florida.
Oh, across the street. You're both with the same
Yes.
school? Okay, all right. Are the students typically coming from, are they typically veterans, is maybe the best way to answer that? I would think it's a natural transition to be a veteran and then move on to that as the next step.
We do have a certain amount that are veterans. They come back from overseas or come back from, finishing their military tour, and they're looking for something in it. You're right. It is a natural progression. But we have some, but it's not the majority.
Is that right?
No.
Is that right? And is there a profile of the average person who goes for that kind of work?
I think it varies by school. I'm Crystal Flynn from the University of Central Florida. I think it varies by school and varies by individual program. I do see a lot of veterans, but I also, for our criminal justice program that's online, but I also work with a lot of students who are already working in law enforcement for an agency who perhaps need to get that additional degree, or we also have a master's degree as well in criminal justice and public administration. So maybe they're trying to move upward and onward or in a different direction within their field.
Okay.
So they are a career veteran in law enforcement. So I think it varies for each of us at our school what the actual student generally looks like. But I don't think there's any one particular model, though. They're all so different. I mean, I work with a student who's straight from CF to us.
Right,
I also work with students I have one that I'm working with now who's a grandfather who decided he wants to to get a particular, degree. So you never know.
Right. And is entering law enforcement or EMT, am I saying it right, Mike? EMT? Is entering that field like an entry point for somebody wanting to do criminal justice as a career?
An EMT, I would say no. I would say that's more on the healthcare side. So EMT and paramedic programs like CF offers. So those would be your first responders, working usually. They're usually also firefighters, especially in this county. Okay, and I can speak to that. I actually used to be the advisor for that program at CF years ago. But that's a slightly different branch, but definitely a great career and absolutely necessary for the community.
And we have
has great programs.
We have great programs in the EMT, and then the up step is the paramedic program. And we work with them with criminal justice. We work on them on mock disaster responses, active shooting responses. So the two divisions on the college work really well together. And it's interesting you asked the question because I see their program as well as ours. We just had a law enforcement class started 2 weeks ago, and we have 18-year-olds all the way up to, I think there's a 55-year-old in the class. And so there is no demographic. Yeah, there is no demographic.
22 years in the Army.
Is that right? Wow. And it just wants to continue serving. See, I always view everybody in that whole field, whether it's the health medical side or the law enforcement side, it's somebody who just wants to serve. That's got to be the one commonality, I guess.
Right.
That you see. And is it offered across the board or all the higher education institutions? Does Webster offer?
No, we don't, not locally.
Okay, so that would be something.
But we do offer some wonderful first responder incentive programs where we reduce their tuition rate to the lowest rate that's available, which is our active duty military rate. So we do get some that want to transition into a different career, but we do not offer.
You're fighting a cold, aren't you?
I am. My voice is nice and deep. Finally, I have a radio voice.
You got the radio thing going on. Yeah, we'll have a late night music show for you later. Yeah.
Jazz.
At UCF, we do have a variety of those programs. And I also have something going on. I think we're catching. I should sit farther down the table. We have criminal justice available either on our main campus or entirely online. We also have legal studies for folks who are thinking about going pre-law, political science, and things like that. We also have a new or slightly altered master's program for criminal justice and public administration. They're combined. You end up with a dual master's at the end, and there's a little bit of time shaved off. So there's lots of options. Each school has kind of a different set of programs available, depending on where you are in your career, what your availability is. We tend to serve a lot of folks who are already working in the field, so our online program to get them a bachelor's degree works really well because they're usually schedule restricted or their shift changes constantly and things like that, so they can't be in a traditional classroom. So our criminal justice program and legal studies program kind of works very well for those individuals. And it's usually offered at a 30% reduction.
When an agency has an opportunity to hire somebody, do they typically post that announcement on, well, I don't know if the bulletin board that's maybe old school stuff, right? Maybe on phone or something?
Well, our criminal justice department gets regular updates from agencies when they're actively recruiting, and I think they share that with all of the schools that have programs. So they usually also have folks who come out and do seminars to share. So
right, it's the same. That's College of Central Florida. We'll usually get an email requesting that they come out and visit their recruits, and we've had a lot of success with recruits being placed that way while they're still in the academy.
Oh, really?
It's a benefit to the recruit. They'll start receiving a salary while they're in the class, and
wow,
their tuition is
good.
Also picked up by that agency.
That is good to know. And do the posts normally outline what your education level needs to be?
Yes. Every agency is different. Some of your larger agencies now are not going to the 2-year or 4-year degree. Or if it's just, the statutory, entry-level qualifications, then that'll also be posted on that notice that we receive.
And we get, Dean McIntosh was talking about the individuals coming from the agencies, but a lot of these larger agencies have dedicated personnel as recruiters. They have recruiter vehicles, and that's what they do. But we've had people come from Dallas, Texas, to recruit in our class.
Wow,
We've had them Tallahassee, South Florida. So our recruits, while they're in their program, their 5-month program, have the benefit of seeing recruiters from many of these different agencies.
So I'm guessing if you're already hired, if you already have the job, and you look at one of those postings and you don't meet the educational requirements, then I guess you think ahead, you think to the future, and you say, well, let me start taking these courses now because that job's going to open up again sometime, right?
Right.
And does that happen a lot? I mean, do you have students who want to further their career and come back? Then maybe they've already graduated.
Well, some of our recruits, I'll use the class we just started as an example. We had two of the recruits that were like 1 or 2 classes away from receiving a degree. So of course, when they finish this summer, they've already been talking with the advisors, and they'll finish that degree. And I usually use myself as an example. I've already working in the field and wanting to get that degree, and I tell them that it's more than possible.
We have a rock star with Dr. McIntosh. He came and did most of his degrees and his steps in terms of his career there. So he's like our poster rock star. And it's wonderful because the recruits see anything is possible.
Yeah, that is awesome.
And we have a unique program at the college in the criminal justice in that when our recruits finish and successfully complete the program, they are also given tuition free credits towards they get up to 12 credits towards a 2-year degree for finishing the academy in
Nice.
terms of like-based courses.
There was a story in the news, and I don't know if this applies, but it was about a nursing compact or something with 26 other states where we used to. Do you know what I'm talking about? Does that apply to any of this? And just for the listeners who didn't hear that story, it sounds like a nurse in Florida can now use her Florida license to practice her profession in 25 other states. It sounds like.
Right. I don't have any ins and outs. Of course, our program doesn't deal with the nursing, side of our educational programs. But I did read it, and apparently that's a multi-state license apparently, and that's going to allow them, as you said, to practice in all these other states without having to do anything additional.
And there's not a compact with the states reference criminal justice in terms of law enforcement certification, but there are reciprocal agreements with other states. So there are several states that you could go if you've had the Florida certification, and you could go and take either a 1-week or a 2-week course. So there are reciprocal agreements between the individual states, but not a compact.
So you read my mind. You knew where I was going, didn't you?
Yes, yes.
Well, and that is something I wonder if. If you perhaps would prefer to live in Texas, you said you had a recruiter in Texas. Does the education here need to be amended in any way? And it sounds like it does not. It sounds like you're in. You're ready to go in.
Well, we look at this all the time. We go to our commission meetings quarterly, and they're sanctioned by the Criminal Justice Standards and Training Commission, and that's one of the things we look at. Is Florida at the top as far as our standards? And interesting you use Texas because our system and Texas' system is pretty similar.
Oh, is that right?
So, of course, if somebody went from Texas to here or here to Texas, there's not a lot of, difference. But you have some other states that won't recognize our standards at all, and vice versa.
What are the different types of courses for a first responder? Are they all kind of the same, or do all the jobs, do they differentiate once they actually get the job?
I think it depends on the level of program. Like for a bachelor's degree at the University of Central Florida, you're going to learn basic criminal justice courses in policing, corrections. It's very broad strokes over the field, and all of your instructors are going to be career professionals who have experience in law enforcement, generally speaking, which kind of adds to the tone of you have someone who has real experience teaching the course and an expert. And I think that's the case in all of the programs, and that differs a lot of other majors. You may not have someone who is literally an expert or has the on-the-ground experience who's teaching a course. So that's, I think, something unique to criminal justice and some of those fields. But it just depends on, which program and where you are. So your programs...
Right, and it's the same at the College of Central Florida. We have our AS degree program and then our Bachelor of Applied Science, with the specialization in public safety administration. And what we found is that, she just stated, those who have been out there in the career and for the most part, some of them have retired, and couple that with education, and they make excellent instructors.
So does the student who changes his mind, let's say he wants to be a firefighter, and halfway in or 3/4 of the way in, he says, I think I'd rather be with the sheriff's department. Is there anything different they have to do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Entirely different programs, yeah.
Yes, and they have to, because there's certification programs, each of these programs, the EMT, the paramedic, as well as law enforcement, and they have to start the program from the beginning. And same thing if law
really?
enforcement went over to the EMT, paramedic, firefighter side. And we actually get a lot of fighters coming into the program, and they decide to change their career because they're working hand in hand, and we do in the community. We work hand in hand with the EMTs and the paramedics, firefighters, so they see that and they say, oh, this is more for me. But they have to start from the beginning in the program.
You know, my son's wife, my daughter-in-law, actually started out as an EMT or a paramedic, I'm not sure which, and then decided to become a teacher. She teaches at Lake Weir Middle School, I think. So, I mean, that's completely changing a path. So what, it's somebody like that, I'm guessing, do they have to just go back to school again after you've...
You would.
Yeah.
Those are specific certifications. EMT and paramedic, that's not a degree, it's a certification, so it's a slightly different education level.
Oh, okay.
So then you'd come back to school to get at minimum, usually a 4-year degree to become a teacher.
Right,
Based
okay.
on your... Now, Mike, you might be able to speak to, if you have someone who's already working in law enforcement, maybe switches over to like the business aspect or wants to work within the organization. They see themselves wanting to work for the sheriff's department or the police department, but maybe not as a first responder, first on the scene. Would you have programs that you could help?
Well, you know, we have like what you said earlier, a master's in public administration. That's something that would definitely tie in because
sure,
you're working
yeah.
with the public.
Right.
You know, what we see those, of course, you know, when you work for a law enforcement agency and you're working for a state, you know, you can retire fairly early. So we do get some of those that have retired and they're going on to go into a different profession, maybe in local government or something like that.
Right.
But I think because we don't really tie in too much, what's really interesting to me is the transition that maybe we can speak about. A student that, or not even a student, a high school graduate, or someone that's working out in the community, they don't have any education. How will they become? What is their path? You know, what is their pathway? And then how could they continue on to maybe move up the ranks, like what you know in your career?
Well, the first key, and my famous quote that I tell everyone is, you know, it all starts with one course.
Yeah.
You know, first the
True.
decision has to be made that this is what I want and I'm willing to do, you know, what it takes to get it. Of course, in my case, it was, you know, a 2-year degree. You know, I started my career in corrections, the crossover, of course, and Coordinator Kelly was one of my coordinators when I was in school. You know, so crossover to law enforcement and then just continuing that educational path. You know, and my path took me through UCF and the master's degree program there and then on to Capella.
Wow.
So for my doctorate, but it just takes that dedication to say, this is what I want to do and I want to do what it takes to get it.
And not everyone can become a law enforcement officer. Because there are some things, so maybe we should touch on
That's
what,
true.
you know, how to make sure your life is in the right path.
And maybe not everyone wants to be a frontline law enforcement officer, but wants to work in the field as well. So there's kind of a split side to that.
Right. In law enforcement, the biggest thing is, you know, you have the public's trust. So usually if you've done something in your past that, you know, has betrayed the public's trust, main thing being, you know, if you have any felonies, you just absolutely can't, you know, work in that career field. In agencies, you know, now the biggest thing is how the community views them. So if you've done anything that's going to bring negative light to that agency, you're probably not going to get
is that right?
hired by that agency.
Oh, wow.
It's true. There may be other opportunities for you in other fields, but
Right.
that's not going to be one of them. So when you're talking to experts, or if you're going in to see a success coach like myself or an advisor on other programs, you need to be upfront about where you're coming from, what your background is, what your goals are. So because we each have dedicated staff that can help guide you to the program that's going to be the best fit for whatever your
Yeah,
goal is.
yeah.
But if you don't tell us that you may have had these hurdles, then you could end
Wow,
up,
yeah,
and we
yeah,
were just
yeah.
talking about going through a program because you meet state requirements, but you're not able to get hired.
So you need to be
because-
upfront.
Right.
What about the corrections? Does the corrections field allow somebody who had been a felon, let's say they cleaned up their act and they want to do something right? Because I would think that person could maybe, I don't know, be a mentor to some of the people in there.
Yes, statutorily is just not allowed.
It's not allowed, okay.
I
Okay.
spent 15 years working with corrections. Something that is allowed, they allow, you know, some of these people to be, you know, mentors for the other inmates. They'll come in with church groups or, you know,
Okay,
different
right,
mentoring programs. They have to, of course, have to have, you know, permission to do that. But, you know, that kind of helps them that way. But as far as being employed, statutorily, it's just not allowed.
Someone with a background like that most likely can find a role in an advocacy position that may be not a paid position, but they can still make an impact if they've learned from wherever they went wrong and now they're back on the right path. There's usually through religious organizations and other organizations where they can kind of
Really?
come back in,
So do
peer mentors and things like that.
So do the schools offer like non-credited courses for somebody like that might help them with that?
Some schools do. Some
Yeah,
schools
yeah.
offer, continuing education and things like that. It all varies.
And we get students. The criminal justice program is what we call a limited access program. Just anybody can't get into the police academy.
That's actually good news for the
Well,
for the
it
citizen,
is,
right?
and Dr. McIntosh spoke to it. There's a threshold. You have to meet the minimum requirements to be able to be certified as an officer in the state, and if not, you can't get into our program. But then we have the associates courses that is not a limited access program. So, for example, anybody's interested in the field, they could go into another career path within an agency, like as in forensics or become an attorney, a staff attorney, things like that. And what I tell people, we get a lot of parents will bring their 16, 17-year-olds over and say, he wants to be a police officer. What would you suggest to him or her? And I say, number one, watch how you handle yourself. Don't get speeding tickets. Don't get traffic tickets.
Oh, wow, really?
It's one of the things that the
That's part of it,
agencies,
yeah.
sure, and the largest liability to an agency involves vehicle accidents. So they look at your driving record. So we tell them to watch their driving record, watch what they're posting on social media, and just stay on the straight line and be a representative of your community now at 16, 17, and then we'll see you in a couple of years. That's what we tell them.
Right.
The relationship that we have with all of those agencies is through the public relations officer, and usually there's only like one at any given time and in any given agency. So I'm guessing there aren't that many opportunities for that job, but it's an important one, I think. I mean, we can't do a large part of what we do with local news, especially when law enforcement is involved, without that person. The public information officer, I guess.
And that's a perfect example of someone who may not necessarily have a criminal justice background, but works within an agency or organization, because that's a little bit more of the PR and marketing side of things, with certainly some experience in education that's criminal justice based, but not necessarily someone who was ever a law enforcement officer. Or
And that's our
like
silent partner in the corner, right?
We do. We have a silent marketing partner over in the corner.
She's an expert on this. She's back there twitching in her chair.
Yeah, you didn't want to be on camera or on microphone. But it really is an important part for what we do. Sure. So what would you recommend? I'd make sure we don't run out of time before you get everything out you want to get out. What would you recommend for somebody listening, maybe on behalf of somebody they care about, their son, their daughter, their nephew?
I'd say to come see us. University of Central Florida, UCF Connect has an office at CF here upstairs in Building 20. We can talk about Direct Connect, which is guaranteed admission to UCF if you complete your AA degree at CF. We've got online programs, on-ground programs in Orlando, and I'm the success coach there, so I can talk through transfer, admission, prerequisites, all of that stuff. But the starting point, if they don't have any education, would be the College of Central Florida to see where they need to begin.
And we have information sessions on Wednesday at noon. If they're thinking about a career in criminal justice, one of our coordinators holds these sessions to talk about what's required, what they're going to have to go through. And the Criminal Justice Institute at the college, we have a Facebook page as well that kind of anybody can like and get on the page, and it kind of gives you a feel for what the culture is there. And also they can make an appointment with any of our staff, and we'll talk to them, and we get a lot of that. So, but these information sessions are wonderful. Wednesdays at noon.
The broadcast that we're doing right now obviously is recorded. It's doing so nice, Mike. I was so frustrated for a while. Yes, and you're looking great.
It's great.
and I say that it's recorded for the sake of our listeners who say, "Oh my gosh, I wish my cousin Eddie was listening right now. This is perfect for him." Everybody has a cousin Eddie, right?
I think so.
And so we do record these. We put them up as podcasts on Facebook and YouTube. So they'll be available.
Excellent.
Any last words, Mike?
No, I'm just Mike Fallon with Webster University. If you want to reach us, you can reach us at webster.edu/Ocala or 861-9330.
Okay, Crystal.
And I'm Crystal Flynn, the success coach for UCF Connect Ocala. Our number is 352-854-2322, extension 1824, and more info at directconnect2ucf.com.
Dr. McIntosh?
Charles McIntosh again from the College of Central Florida. We can be reached at 873-5800, extension 1360, or our Facebook page or cf.edu.
Very good. And Kat, the same. Everything's the same for you, right?
Yes,
As
sir.
Dr. McIntosh. Thank you. And Tina, thank you. Thank you all for coming in. Thank you. We'll take a little break. We will be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. On this Wednesday, times of sun and clouds with a high of 62 in the northern part of the zone to 70.